Good morning. So today we're going to do an oil change on this 2019 Toyota RAV4 and talk about some of the key points that are involved for doing an oil change. First and foremost, most vehicles nowadays have an oil change interval that is anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 miles. And depending on the customer and depending on the vehicle, that can change drastically one way or the other. Here in our shop, we tend to do all oil changes at 5,000 miles, whether or not they have a conventional oil or synthetic oil. Now, most vehicles nowadays, because the engines are high efficiency engines, actually utilize a synthetic oil. And this oil is a 0W16, which is actually a very unusual oil for pretty much any vehicle. But the 0W stands for zero weight, and the 16 means that it lubricates at the same properties as a 16 weight oil. This is a very thin oil, which helps the vehicle get good gas mileage. As far as protecting is concerned, if you were doing heavy duty towing with this vehicle or something like that, you would actually want to use something a little bit thicker. But this Mobil 1 oil is an excellent oil that's used in all kinds of vehicles, including this 2019 RAV4. So let's get into doing this actual oil change. The first thing you want to do is you got to pop the hood. All right. So to open the hood on a vehicle, you come around, and pretty much every vehicle out there, the indicator, or excuse me, the lever used for popping the hood is located either on the side over here or up here underneath, or actually right here. And on this vehicle, it's located right here. Give it a pull. We'll go around and we're going to open the hood. Now, all hoods actually have a safety latch underneath them, a mechanism that, God forbid you were to pull that and you're driving down the road, if the wind were to catch the hood, it would try to rip it open. So there's a safety mechanism under here that you also have to hit in order to lift the hood. In order to get to that safety mechanism, very often you got to kind of lift the hood and look underneath there and see where the lever's at. And I can see in this case that there's a lever right here. So I'm going to push it to the left and lift the hood up. Now, depending on the hood, you have a hood prop or you'll have gas struts that hold up the hood. In this case, we have this hood prop. So I'll undo it. Bring it over here. And the hood prop has to fall into a little hole. And that hole, in this case, Toyota actually put an arrow right on the body itself that indicates where they want the hood prop to go. This is a very important thing because if you're to take the hood prop and possibly place it down on something that's not designed for it, this hood is heavy and it could damage, say, this coolant reservoir or the relay and fuse box. You need to make sure you put it right in the correct spot, which in this case is right there. Now, by looking at this engine, you guys may or may not be able to tell, but through the years, you'll be able to tell that this is a 4-cylinder Toyota engine. I can tell it's 4 cylinders because it's got 4 intake runners on the intake manifold. Also, because of the configuration of the engine, this vehicle was offered with 2 engines. It was offered with this 4-cylinder engine, and it's also offered with Toyota's V6 engine. The V6 engine is split like this, but also the V6 engine will say right on this plastic cover, V6. Okay, so when you're ordering oil for this vehicle or ordering pretty much anything, an air filter, anything that is, we'll say, engine related, you need to know what size engine you're working with here. If you have a 4-cylinder, it's going to take a certain air filter, a certain oil filter, certain oil, you name it. It's very, very important. Now, once again, this engine states right here in the engine compartment that this engine does take an SAE 0W16, okay? So that's actually kind of like a double check right there. The auto parts store sent us the 016, but also the vehicle says it right here, SAE 0W16. Any zero weight oil is automatically a synthetic oil. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get this car up in the air, and we're gonna do the oil change. Now, just like when you're pouring soda out of a container, when you're pouring the soda, in order for the soda to come out of the container, air has to go into the container. And the way that we can do that with an engine is if we take the oil cap and we just open it just a little bit. You don't have to actually even physically remove it all the way, but just crack it open. What that does is it allows air to be able to enter the engine as the oil is coming out of the engine. In most cases, it may not even make a difference, but in some cases it does. And in this case, we'll find out. But now the oil will come streaming out of the crankcase in a nice smooth stream instead of glugging out and making a mess on the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this vehicle up in the air. The controls for the lift are right here. I'm going to press the up button. I want to make sure that everybody is out of the way and that nothing is leaning up against this lift before I put it up. Oh yeah, I can go double speed, but only double speed. Yeah. Under wide angle, it is in the shot. Yeah. Okay, so we're good to go. I'm going to get the oil receptacle with a bucket on top to put the oil in. Okay, so here we have, this is our oil change receptacle, and here's a drain pan. Now, most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, we could just drain oil directly into the oil receptacle and it gets collected down here. But right now, this is full, and for just the purposes of keeping the time going here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drain the oil right into this oil bucket, or oil pan, excuse me. Set it right on top. I can adjust the height of this by lifting this washer and carefully moving this up and down, just like so. And I'm going to drop it there. So now, looking underneath this car, you can see here, it's all flat panels. This is considered the under tray of the car. This protects the engine, but it also makes the vehicle more aerodynamic. Engineers have discovered that keeping the bottom of the car as flat as possible is almost as important as keeping the top of the car nice and smooth too, because just as much air goes underneath this car as air goes over the top of this car. So if they can keep this all nice and smooth, that helps with the efficiency and the aerodynamics of the vehicle going down the road, and better aerodynamics and better efficiency equal better gas mileage. So come take a look under here for a sec. Now what Toyota did is they put a panel right here so that you can access the oil filter and your drain. Now we have 10mm nuts, so I'm going to go through it and I'm going to remove these 4 nuts and we're going to remove this panel. Anytime I'm doing an oil change, I always have a rag very close by. Obviously, when you're doing an oil change, there's always a chance of getting messy here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Go ahead, set that down out of the way. Put my screws somewhere where they won't get lost. And then I'm going to take that just for 1 second. And let me show you what I have here. So, located on the bottom of the engine, this is the actual oil pan or the oil sump of the engine. This is the drain plug. This is where the oil is going to come out of. Located in the front, right here, this is the oil filter. And the oil filter is a very important part of doing an oil change. You always replace the oil filter every time you do an oil change. The oil filter filters out all the particulates that are floating around in the oil and carbon deposits and you name it. So another really important part. So here, real simple. Got our drain plug and our oil filter. And before I even pull the oil receptacle underneath the car, I'm just going to crack the oil drain plug free. I make sure I got the right size on there. It's not moving around. I'm always stronger pulling than I am pushing. So if I can, I always put the ratchet where I can hold on to it and I'm going to pull it towards me. Just like so. I'm just going to crack it free. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring my oil pan underneath the car. Now, before I even do this, I want to get my rags just in case. I should have gotten them before, but they're right here. The other thing I have close by is this stuff. And it's kitty litter. It's called Speedy Dry. And basically, if I spill oil on the ground, what I can do is take a handful of this, throw it on the ground, grind it in with my foot, or use this block, and grind it in. It absorbs the oil, and you throw it out. And it's a real easy way to clean up a mess. But I'm going to keep my paper towels handy just in case. There we go. Now, while the oil is draining out of the car, this is the time for me to go around and do other visual inspections on the car. I want to look at the brakes. I want to look at the tires. I want to look at the car. It takes probably about 2 minutes for all the oil to evacuate out of the engine. So I'm going to look underneath here, take a look at the tires and the tire tread depth. I can look at the brakes and notice the indication of the brakes and how the brake rotors look. This is a relatively new vehicle. It's a 2019. The rear brakes, I can see the brake pad material. It's nice and thick. The rotors look good. The tires, I don't see any gashes from it being curbed. And look at the exhaust system. The exhaust system looks all intact. All the suspension looks good. Doesn't look like it's run over anything that could have compromised the under panels of the car. A lot of the times you look at a car, you notice that the top of it looks beautiful. You go underneath the car and you'll see that there's big dents because somebody drove over a curb or whatever it may be, or even ran over a dead animal. That will do damage to the car. You can see here, there's a lot of plastic underneath this car. And plastic, of course, can break. And even the steel, all the steel, that can bend and get distorted too. But this looks good, so I'm going to continue doing my walk around. This tire looks good, tread's good. And the same here. Everything looks good. All the under panels look good. See, when you take your car in for an for an oil change, the customer kind of expects that you are looking at other things and really checking the car out, that you're not just doing the oil change. A lot of people, their cars don't even go in other than once a year to have an oil change or to have a New York State inspection. So when they do take it in for that 1 year, it's really important to go through and check it out and make sure everything is cool. If this car came in today and I do an oil change and then I had it leave, but it had low tire pressure, or maybe one of the tires was bald, or there was a problem with the car, the customer's not going to be so happy with me as a technician if I let this car leave my shop without letting them know. So this is when you want to go through and check everything out.